Hey there, it's Kimberly with Knit for Brains, and I'm so excited I finished it! My happy, scrappy cow. So stay tuned because in this segment, I'm going to show you how to do each one of the individual squares that I finished here in the sweater and how to put it all together. So stay tuned. Hey, it's Kimberly here and welcome to my channel Knit for Brains. I'm really excited because I have finished and I'm going to show you my happy scrappy cardigan cowl that I started a couple weeks back. And I wanted to show you all the different squares that I did and how I put the whole pattern together. And I'm even going to do some tutorials if you want to know how to do these particular squares. They're very, very simple squares. How we actually can put this all together and made this really pretty cardigan cowl. So it's two-sided. It has just a basic boat neck right across his top. So each square, there's no special triangles or anything like that. You can actually wear it either way. And then what I did was I had some squares coming down the sleeve to bring in a little bit more color. And then I just added some double crochets around the arms to give it a little bit more space in there, and then came on down. So honestly, this was sort of like a it as I go. I would put the squares together and try it on, and then maybe add a little bit more, or add a little bit more to the squares, to a couple of the rows and things like that. So it was really kind of a as you go. I brought this pattern with me on a recent cruise that my husband and I took with some friends. So I actually there are 16 squares on the front and on the back, and then there are 4 on each arm. So there's a total of 40 squares, and I made 32 of them on the cruise. So each square took me just under an hour. They were really, really very simple, and I'll show you how I did that. And then I actually just sewed them all together. But I love how it came out. I love all the colors. It came out way better than I think I anticipated. I think it was going to be really bright and kind of crazy with the colors, but I really like how they all came together. Okay, so what I did was I found 4 different squares for the most part that I liked, that I thought these are going to be super easy. They're going to go together really, really nicely. There's going to be some nice contrast in the different patterns. And the thing was, based on the measurements that I knew I had to hit, I wanted each square to be no bigger than about 6 inches across, like a 6-inch square-ish, which meant that each one of the squares had to be about the same size. I couldn't have a really big square and then a bunch of little squares. Okay, so based on that, I went and I found the different patterns. Each square had 6 rows. That's sort of how I just measured it. I did this really cute heart here. This here is like a little daisy. And then this is sort of a mum's flower on this one. And then I just did a real typical granny square on this one. So that was basically the 4, if you can see. These were the 4 patterns that I went with. And there was a couple rogue patterns that I did. Like this one had a little bit of a different looking flower. And there was this one here had a little bit of a different pattern. And when I started making these squares, I realized it wasn't really what I was going for. I didn't want to rip the whole thing out, but I just kind of stopped. But predominantly, I loved the hearts. I really love the hearts. So I did those in a lot of different colors. And I loved the granny squares because that's so typical, right? And I really wanted to throw in some really cute little flowers. So kept them very simple. And then once you get the pattern going, I was able to just pretty much do it by memory. And then as you can see, I added and kept the colors going on the opposite side. So as I was putting these squares together, what I wanted to do was I wanted to have 4 squares across. I knew that was going to give me the dimensions that I needed. So yes, this is a part 2. I actually have, since I did the last section on this, I blocked it, this sweater, and then I actually wet blocked it and laid it out. And I love how it came out because the Angora that was in this yarn actually really started coming through with the blocking. I just did a little bit of a hand wash and then I blocked it and laid it out to dry with these. If you've never tried these before, these are like these knit blockers and they're fantastic. These are from Knit Picks. I'm sorry, Knitter's Pride. They come in all different colors. But this is what I use. They look like this, and then you just sort of stick them down to when you're blocking out your squares or scarves or anything like that. It just kind of helps to keep them in place. So I got these guys. I use these all the time. And then, a little bit of a cheapy find, I went to my local dollar store, 99-cent store, I think it was. I found these. And these are things that you can use, you know, like if you're working out, maybe you want to put some extra, it's like an exercise to protect the floor. But these are fantastic foams. It's the exact same foam that you would use if you were going to be, you know, buying the foam blocking pieces. Obviously, they're a little bit bigger. But for a sweater, this works great. And I got 4 of these for $10, like $9.99. So I just lay these out in my backyard, and this is what I lay out all of my sweaters, my scarves, or anything like that. So these are just some regular little exercise blocks, because if you go and look at any of your knitting stores or even Amazon and you try to find these foam, they're kind of expensive. So I was pretty excited when I found this at my local like dollar store, 99-cent store. And they even had smaller pieces that were like $5 or $6. So if you're going to be doing any amount of blocking, which I highly recommend that you do, it's one of those extra steps that are really worth it when you are doing anything from like weaving or crocheting or knitting, sweaters, scarves. It helps to give it shape. So I always recommend doing a what we call wet blocking. So just do like a hand wash. I just use some like Woolite or even some nice, just like a mild detergent. And I just do it either in a cold wash or I do it on a mild cycle. I just did this on a mild cycle. And then it just kind of wrings it out. But if you've never felt it before, what it does is it really helps to kind of get the fibers to marry, not really melt together, but just sort of like fuse together, if you will. In this particular yarn that I used, you can see there's a little bit more of a halo here than in the other earlier part of the video that I did. That was because I hadn't blocked it yet. But here you can see how you've got this really nice, a little bit of a soft and a halo. And just by blocking it, it made the fabric, first of all, it smells delicious, but it made the fiber, it just kind of held the structure together, but it made it so much softer. Can you see the little bit of halo there? So if you've never really blocked before or felt it or thought that maybe it was a waste of time, this is one of those steps that you definitely do not want to miss out on. So after I put the whole thing together, then I just wet felted it and I laid it out in the sun to dry. But as you can see, it actually even made the stitches kind of fuse together just a little bit better. So getting back to what I did with this pattern, because each of the yarns were the same brand, just different colors. And I had to shop high and low. I went to everything from Etsy to these little online stores. I found a skein of this and a skein of that and a skein of this. I just took them all, whatever I could find. So it took a little bit of time. I know this was supposed to be my Scrappy Cal, but as I said before, as I was working with this yarn, I loved it so much. I was like, I want to make the whole sweater with this. And that was such a good idea because now the whole sweater has this uniform feel. The yarns have these little tweeds in them. So it made it for a really beautiful sweater. What I do is every time I do a project, and I'm getting better at this. I didn't used to do this, but I found this to be so valuable. I have my little notebook, boom, like this. Okay, just any notebook works. And I write down all the notes of whatever it is that I was doing. And like the measurements and things like that. So this one here is for the sweater that I just made. And I took all the labels, I saved all of them so I knew the brand, but I also had all the colors that were inside here. And it turns out I used 11 skeins like I thought for this. And then on here, I just put down the day I started it and the day I finished it. So it took me about 20 days to make it because I wasn't doing it every single day. And I used two squares on each sleeve. Each sleeve there was, I'm sorry, that was down here. So I had the front and the back panel. And I used 16 squares on each side. So the front had 16, the back had 16, and each square was 16 inches. I'm sorry, 6 inches. I just got home from work and I'm a little tongue-tied. And then on the sleeves, I made 2 sleeves. And so I had 4 squares on each sleeve. Each one again was 6. So then I knew I needed to make 40 squares that were 6 inches around. This was the yarn that I used. I wrote myself little notes here. how many skeins and then how much was in one. And then here was the diagram that I drew. So I measured myself across the chest and the arms, and I knew how big I wanted them to make, or I wanted to each one to be. And then basically I just drew across. Okay. Now I could have put, you know, like I want to put a heart here or a flower here or whatever it is. But I found that because I did them in so many different colors, I laid it out a lot. Looking at, okay, so I tried to make it where I had one heart motif per row. So it was one here, and I think actually in one part I kind of messed that up, but that's okay. I really just wanted to make sure that the colors, I didn't have like 2 light blue borders together or 2 pinks. I really wanted to kind of keep the colors in good contrast, just so that they would pop a little bit more. So like I had some yellows here and the oranges, but I wanted to make sure that they weren't the same. So I just kept, you know, laying them out until I had what I liked. And then I just used stitch markers and tied it all up. I did a very, very basic mattress stitch to sew it all together. And then as I would do a row, I would take a look at it, and then I would line it up with the other row and make sure that everything was just the way that I wanted it. And then I just kind of went from there. And then the sleeves, I found that I needed to add a few more rows to the sleeves, you know, just because you need a little bit more room down here. And so I actually just did some double crochets in between the squares. So I added on colors to the squares, and then, you know, added it down to kind of give it some length and to bring all the colors in. And then I just did a very simple peacoat stitch. I have to cut that little piece off. A little peacoat stitch on the arms to give it a little bit of a zhuzh, a little bit of a design element. So I did that on both arms. I did 3/4 inch sleeves. So I didn't go all the way down, but I had it come right to about here. And then I measured that out so that both the arms were nice and straight. And then up around the edge here, I finished it off and just did 3. I think there's 3 rows of half double crochets to give it this nice little boat neck finish. So it really finished off nice. It's got all the different colors in here. It's really, really soft. Again, this yarn that I used is called Kenzie. I'll read the label again. And obviously you don't have to use this yarn. You can use acrylics. You can use whatever you've got. If you are going to be using a bunch of different brands, I would just obviously recommend that you stay with the same weight and the same fiber. So if you're going to use acrylic or you're going to use wool or something like that, this yarn was just a little bit more special. It's from New Zealand. It's called Kenzie, and I'm sure you can still find it, but it's discontinued, so you just have to kind of do a hit or miss. But with something like this, what a great idea, right? They're tiny little skeins. They're 160 yards, 50 grams. But it's 50% New Zealand merino wool, 25% nylon, 10% Angora, 10% alpaca, and 5% silk. So the Angora and the alpaca is what's giving me this really fun halo, all right, and the softness. But because there's that wool, when you do your little bit of a hand wash, it starts to fuse together as if it's going to felt together, but it didn't completely felt together. And then, of course, the silk just gives it a little bit more of a softness. So I am really, really, really happy with the way that this turned out. This was my Happy Scrappy Cardigan Cal. I did tutorials for 3 of the primary squares, and I'll probably end up doing another one. I did a tutorial for the Granny Square, which was very basic. I did one for this chrysanthemum-ish. It's called the Pretty Puffy Flower. And then I also did one for the heart, which I absolutely loved this one, the heartfelt one. The only one that I haven't done yet that I will do for you is this one here, the flower that has the little leaves, which is basically, it's the popcorn stitch. It's very similar to the Pretty Puffy Flower, just a little bit of a different pattern. Excuse me. Actually, it was a little bit easier even than the puffy. So this is it. This is my Happy Scrappy Cal that I'm very, very, very happy with. I love the feel of it. Again, here in Southern California, I may not be able to wear it, you know, every day, but I'm certainly going to be able to wear it in the winter months. I actually wore it out the first night that I literally finished it and wore it out, and I got compliments on it already. And I was like, yay. So, you know, sometimes you do things for other people, which is, of course, a beautiful, beautiful sentiment. And then other times you got to do things for yourself. And this was for me. I challenge you to do something for yourself. So comment below. If you have tried any of the squares that I included in this pattern, I did the tutorials. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you have any feedback, if this made sense or this didn't make sense. Or if you're actually doing this pattern for yourself, I want to know how it's going and I want to know what it looks like. So this again is Kimberly with Knit for Brains. This is my Happy Scrappy Cal, which is really no longer a scrap cal, but it has now become one of my very favorite sweaters, one of my treasured sweaters. There we are. Thanks so much for watching. This is Kimberly with Knit for Brains, and I'll see you soon right here on this channel. Tell your friends.